My name is Coach Ferran, and I am the head of strength and conditioning at Holy Family University out in Northeast Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am in my 6th year now as a strength and conditioning coach and 3rd year as a collegiate strength and conditioning coach. I originally started at the high school level working with football and track and field for Downtown West High School, and made my way in 2022 to taking over this position as the first head strength and conditioning coach for Holy Family. It's been awesome. It's been a great experience, and I've been working to try and create this channel. Admittedly, it's taken me a while because our day-to-day is very busy, and especially the springtime tends to be the busiest time for us. We have a lot of teams that are in season. More of our sports are spring sports and fall or winter sports, and basketball is going on at the same time. But I am so excited to start sharing my world with you guys. So the biggest aim of this channel is going to be as an educational source. There's a lot of things I wish I had known as a young strength and conditioning coach or personal trainer coming up in the field that would have been helpful, would have been kind of guiding me into a bit of a better direction and not make as many mistakes. Now, in this field, we're going to make mistakes. The most experienced of us also make mistakes. But there are some things that I would like to share with you guys from my own experiences and from the people that I talk to, and hopefully bring on a couple of guests to kind of share their experiences with you as well, to help you start on a better foot. And there's a lot more goals that I have with this channel. I want it to be a community source, and want it to be kind of like almost a discussion board of sorts, if possible. If we can get it to that stage, that would be awesome. But without going too much into everything that I'm trying to do, I wanted to kick off this video with my top 5 mobility exercises, get you a little bit of information and get you to have a little bit of a feel of what I'm looking at as a coach, and the why I do some of these exercises with my teams. This first exercise is one of many T-spine mobility flows that you may have seen or done yourself if you were a baseball or volleyball player. I have 2 variations on this video. First one is T-spine flow A. When we talk about thoracic mobility, we're referencing the middle portion of your back and your control over the ability to rotate your trunk. This is critical when developing an athlete's ability to transfer their strength to power and overhead throwing motions. So early on in our off-season lifts, this is an exercise that we like to throw in to start challenging athletes to access a greater range of motion within their trunk. For flow A, you can start with either the inside or outside leg up. However, I like the outside leg up. After we're able to open up some with this first one, we can move to flow B, where after the first movement, we add in a secondary movement where the hand that's against the wall reaches up and over like an arc to a challenging position behind the head. This also adds a small lat stretch to the flow. Here we can see that transfer from mobility training to the sport, like in this clip of one of our pitchers throwing live. Not only do we see the hip opening up, but we see that overhead reach with the trunk rotation as he loads into the throw. Exercise number 2 is the seated good morning. There's a number of different reasons to do this exercise, but my main reasons for doing it is to strengthen the lower back from the hip up, attacking the rectus spinae and psoas muscles, as well as getting an active stretch on the inner thigh or adductor muscles. I train my athletes to work towards accessing as much of their full range of motion as possible in their joints. This trains them to be strong and flex at the hip, rather than rounding the back during hip hinging exercises or squatting. So this is a great way to introduce your clients or athletes to hinging without adding an incredible amount of stress. Then you can make it more challenging by going away from dumbbells and instead using the barbell and work toward having their body weight on the bar. The hip 90-90 has been one of those game-changing exercises when I got back into lifting heavy post-Achilles surgery. I was originally introduced to these from the staff at Penn during my internship and have added variations to my library over the years. There are several different ways to perform 90-90 tasks, but the most basic one is starting and sitting in the 90-90 position. Then once that starts to become more comfortable, we work on actively flipping our hips side to side. We can hold it for an amount of time or rep it, trying to stay as upright in our posture as possible. These types of exercises or stretches are great for targeting both the internal and external rotators of the hip, and as an athlete, improving the mobility and strength of these hip muscles allows for more fluid and efficient movement during their sports. Not to mention, stronger hips also tend to lead to a lower chance of injury in the lower limbs. One of my go-to methods to challenging my athletes is what I call the hip 90-90 riser. Here we roll forward over the front knee to lift ourselves up, adding to the demand on our internal and external hip muscles to be controlled on the way up and down. Ben Patrick, better known as the knees over toes guy, has made this movement very popular over the last few years. The KOT lunge, as I like to call it, has been a staple in my library since I began using it over 5 years ago. For me, I get a great stretch in my ankle doing this before my lower body days, and couldn't imagine not having this in my warm-up. Starting my athletes or new clients in an elevated position, the setup has the front leg on a bench or a box with the back leg on the ground. The goal is to sort of glide forward, driving your knee over your toes as best you can without allowing the heel to lift off the bench. By doing this, your front leg encourages deep squat technique as you drive forward, targeting your quads and glutes while working on mobility at the knee and ankle. Then on the flip side, you're getting a big stretch in your hip flexors in the back leg. So you're doing a lot with just one exercise. You can hold a stretch, add weights to make it more challenging, but the ultimate goal is to be able to perform this from the ground. I still have work to do, but this was huge for me to be able to get this far. Volleyball is the first sport that comes to mind when deciding on why you would add this into any of your programs. Volleyball dig is essentially this movement. So they are the athletes I challenge the most with this exercise. This final mobility exercise is one that most practitioners should know and utilize themselves. I love this movement largely for its ability to assess athletes or clients from a big picture perspective. I've seen some people do this exercise by holding the client's arms, someone in front of them. However, in my opinion, if you want to get the most out of this, then give them a dowel and see if they can manage holding it above their head. This exercise is performed as described, holding the dowel overhead as they perform a squat as deep as they can. Why this is such a great exercise when talking about mobility is that you can manipulate how the client performs it to determine if they have poor ankle or hip mobility. And with holding the dowel, you can observe their thoracic and shoulder mobility as well. You can determine poor ankle or hip mobility by elevating the athlete's heels, lessening the demand from the ankle joint in the squat. If the movement is easier for them, then it is a sign of the ankle being the culprit. But if they still struggle, then their hips are most likely the issue. So now we can guide our focus on the appropriate area. Here you can see that my squat gets ever so slightly better, and with my history of having Achilles surgery, it makes sense that the ankles would be my area of weakness here. I like to add this into my warm-ups when possible, with the heels elevated from the start to encourage the athlete to get used to squatting as low as possible. And I put them into our deload weeks for the same purpose, occasionally having it weighted depending on the sport or the athlete. Thank you so much for checking out my video today, and I hope you were able to take away something to put into your programs or use with your clients or athletes. Shout out to my athletes and teams for letting me use video for my workouts, for my channel. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. I can't wait to see you guys next time. Until then, take care and keep working.